So we have already seen some excellent presentations, and I'm quite confident we're about to see another one. Our final briefing is on decarbonizing the global economy with clean technology experts. This was the group advised by Professor Jocelyn. And if everybody's ready, take it away.
Hello, everybody. My name is Aurélie Rodzinek, and today it is my absolute pleasure to be presenting on behalf of our capstone project. I would like to thank the Department of Commerce, International Trade Administration, the ITA. Hold on. Excuse me. Where do I point on this?
Nope, it's not working.
A short commercial break, guys. No pressure.
There we go. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm just gonna do a little test run. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, great. So, so, as I was saying, I would like to thank the Department of Commerce, International Trade Administration, the ITA. In particularly, I would like to thank Charlie Sad and Rory Hughes for their indispensable support during this project. As we all know, climate change is one of the single biggest challenges of our time. However, it also harbors the opportunity for the American industry to lead a renewable revolution global economy. For this reason, the ITA began to facilitate clean technology production through export programs, but it still faces some implementation challenges. Our capstone builds on the success of the ITA's Small Modular Reactor Public-Private Program, also known from now on as a PPP, to explore the viability of a new PPP that is capable of exporting geothermal and clean hydrogen technologies. Our project scope included the identification of representative markets, a literature review, over 20 experts interview, and an analysis of the ITA's Clean Tech Export Initiative. Finally, we produced tailored recommendations for each technology and their representative markets. We worked very closely through weekly meetings with our clients, targeting our research on these questions. By answering these questions, we managed to map out the policy, trade, and regulation challenges, the market's key stakeholders, also the competitors, the market size, public education needs, and finally, the barriers to expansion. We also contextualize the US companies' competitive advantages within these respective markets. And so, for geothermal, we identified 3 main countries: the Philippines, Indonesia, and Kenya. While the Philippines, Indonesia, and Kenya were proven to be attractive markets, both for their geothermal capacity and also the US foreign policy, as the Philippines and Indonesia are located in the Ring of Fire, a rich geothermal region, Kenya is located in the Great Rift Valley and could be a possible entry point for the rest of Africa. Our analysis identified both unique and shared challenges for these markets. In Kenya, while geothermal is key for its development, the country also is challenged by perceived and actual financial risk, corruption, tax barrier, and grid capacity issues. And despite Indonesia's ambitious geothermal strategies and its extremely attractive trade agreements, we found that it is bottlenecked by bureaucracy and investments. While the Philippines did share similar challenges to these markets, we decided it is the most suitable market for a PPP because, first of all, it has over half of a century of experience in geothermal development. It's a significant interest in public-private programs with foreign direct investment policies, including 100% foreigner ownership, favorable tax conditions, and even risk mitigation mechanisms. Due to its domestic and geopolitical development, it has become a key partner for the US Indo-Pacific strategy, which is also something to consider. For those reasons and more, we recommended the ITA to, first of all, support US companies in navigating the regulatory and bureaucratic challenges, as well as forging connections with national stakeholders in the Filipino government. We also recommended to promote feed-in tariffs and other financial incentives that can support these companies, and to facilitate infrastructure improvement to support the geothermal transition across the islands. Then, for the final half of this semester and our project, we focused on green hydrogen, which was of particular interest to our client. For green hydrogen, we identified Japan, Indonesia, and Chile as the target countries. Indonesia's strategic location, which I have mentioned before, as well as its abundant renewable resources and growing interest in green hydrogen, made it a critical market to consider. Chile's ambition to become the cheapest hydrogen exporter through its ample renewable resources, which are 70 times its current need, made it a key player. And Japan, well, Japan is the pioneer of clean hydrogen policies. While it's developing a global blueprint, it also shapes global supply chains. Like in geothermal, we study these influential markets' feasibility for the PPP. And although Chile and Indonesia have abundant renewable energy resources, with Chile benefiting from significant international investment of over $1 billion, both countries struggle with policy constancy, infrastructure improvement, and environmental justice issues. In contrast, we found out that Japan has existing policies, investments, and framework in place for a green hydrogen economy. And although fossil fuel still consists 77% of its electricity grid, its hydrogen plan is unmatched and unfolding. Japan also welcomes international partnerships, which the US enjoy due to its close ties. Namely, we've just seen the recent Prime Minister visit to the White House. It makes it the most suitable candidate for a green hydrogen-focused public-private program. But to realize this PPP, we recommended the ITA to focus on these main recommendations. First, we recommended that the ITA helps US companies to adhere to the high Japanese standards. We also recommended to facilitate workforce development and knowledge sharing through academic research programs and pilot projects in Japan. And lastly, we saw a need to promote the public awareness in Japanese society in order to overcome both the cost and the environmental concerns around green hydrogen. Ultimately, we produced 6 final reports, which acts now as a key stepping stone for both of the Department of Commerce as well as the Department of State, and hopefully to other foreign government and US investors. During our visit to DC, we were lucky to present our finding twice, where leaders in both the Commerce and the State Departments, including the ITA's Deputy Assistant Secretary for Manufacturing, Industry, and Analysis, personally expressed our work's timely relevance as bilateral and trilateral negotiations are taking place, specifically between the US, the Philippines, and Japan, and even between the US and Kenya. How our research is invaluable in its quality and influential over their joint efforts as well with the Energy Department. And finally, based on their science and environmental justice questions, we witnessed how MPA ESP students like us are needed in order to translate environmental science into policy for decision key makers. As I conclude this presentation and officially conclude our capstone project, I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank my incredible team, our managers, Kate and Radhika, Christian, Joey, Jeremy, Fritz, Liana, Saya, Tetsu, and Yuya. And lastly, our faculty advisor, Professor Sarah Jossam, for everybody's amazing support and hard work throughout this semester. Thank you for your time. I will now take questions. That is true. Ask me about DC, please.
Yeah, I was just a great presentation. I was just curious, since the cost of green hydrogen is so high, at what cost is US expecting to export this green hydrogen from Chile, Indonesia, and one other, Japan? Yeah.
So when we're talking about cost, right, we are discussing on a global economy. We don't see it so much as the dollar amount that the US will put in, as much as the partnership that this will actually facilitate. It's about doing a global transition. If you look at Japan's blueprint, they're already in contact with the EU, with every possible regional state around their area, including the US. So to pin a certain number of how much the US would actually have to invest is not so much the approach that we were, considering, as much as what would be the key partnerships to even make this possible. Green hydrogen is an emerging technology. There's a lot of cost that has to do with the resourcing, with the transmission, with technological advances that are still undertake. And this kind of encompasses the entire costs that go into this operation.
Great presentation. Do you want to share anything about your trip in DC?
Yes, I would. I will just say this. I think all of us felt a lot of gratification sitting there being asked quite high level questions, all the way from scientific and chemistry to finance mechanism to how to distribute this infrastructure on an island state. And it was really nice to see that the work that we've invested and the amount of research that we've done is really going to be influential, and is really going to be influential in the next few weeks as prime ministers come and as the US really tries to power this. So we felt a lot of gratitude, we felt a lot of gratification on our side, and I think it's really exciting. After all, we're all here in this program because we want to, push forward a certain green revolution, and being a small part of it, is really nice.
Great presentation, Aureli. I was wondering, it seemed like y'all are like you had 6 different countries, right? And you chose 2 as, I don't want to say like the lowest hanging fruit, but there was to some extent like your rationality made it seem that way. In your 6 memos, did y'all provide recommendations for the other 4 countries and take into account their needs and how to get them to be lower hanging fruit?
Yes, 100%. We took like full considerations when we were doing our analysis. We were developing matrices, we were looking at the finance, and actually I have some of the recommendations and the challenges for most of them. But if I'm being completely honest, when you look at all of these countries, you have to look at the partners that can actually have the capacity to make it happen. So I mentioned Chile, for example. It has over $1 billion, $1 billion in foreign investment. But if you don't have the particular policies in place that are capable to sustain all the political regimes for the next, I don't know, 10, 20 years, it doesn't really make it as attractive as Japan, for example, which is why we were focusing mostly on not the lowest hanging fruit, but just the most solidified option that can execute it. Thank you.
Well, 5 excellent presentations. I think uh, the class deserves a round of applause for a great job. And I like to use this period of time to be a little bit reflective and self-conscious about what's going on. And I think in a way this last briefing talked a bit about that, which is the combination of scientific knowledge, policy analysis, operational and practical issues. Throughout these briefings, there was a lot of discussion, and certainly in the Q&A, about what could actually happen. How do you get from here to there? There are lots of environmental policy analysis, which is wildly symbolic and bears no resemblance to the world we're living in and the world we want to live in later. And so all of these projects dealt with the reality. I mean, the Port Authority, I mean, how do you build enough charging stations to go electric quickly enough? And, you know, you see that piece of analysis, and that comes from a thought process that is not typical, where you're integrating the technical, the operational, the financial, the management, and the policy analysis, which is really what your last year has been about. The other thing is, you know, 6 reports, hundreds of pages of analysis, 10-minute briefings. So you've got to boil down all this complexity to something that decision makers can actually digest and then act on. And that's a huge challenge because the technical, political, managerial, economic issues we're dealing with are incredibly complicated. And yet, in order to act on them, you've got to boil it down to 3 or 4 things that can actually be done. Each of these briefings did just that. And so you might not think of that as remarkable, but if you're in this field and you later on are engaged with other colleagues, you'll see not everybody knows how to do this, and you do know how to do it. The teamwork and cooperation, you know, we had in the dry runs people that weren't available, and other people had to sit in and give those briefings so that the group process could continue. One of the great things about working in a group is if somebody's not feeling well, somebody fills in. You know, Maya Lugo, who is so critical to everything we're doing here, is at home with the flu today, and we had help to fill in her place. And so that is part of the dynamic that goes on here. I think what I want you to be thinking about is that the process that you've gone through, the science last summer, the 3 semesters of workshop going from science communication to implementation analysis to these applied projects for clients, nobody else in the world does this. So this is a unique program. It's a very rigorous and difficult program. You're doing 2 years of work in 1 year. You know, 54 points of credit. The rest of SEPA gets to do that in 4 semesters with a nice 3-month break in the middle of it. And we just push you all the way through it, and you succeeded in doing that. And so, I mean, I should say our graduation rate in this program approaches 99%. So very few people get left behind. And one of the reasons that happens is that you work together. And, you know, nobody's here trying to get one up on the next person. All of you are trying to help each other. And, you know, it's a really important part of the culture and of the way that this class has carried itself. I'm really proud of what you've done. I think you should be proud of what you've done, and even more important, of what you're going to do. The reason we're all here is a sense of mission about saving the planet and also bringing people out of extreme poverty at the same time and maintaining a more equitable world, or building a more equitable world, I should say. Every one of these projects talked about environmental justice. I should say a decade ago that wasn't the case. That's really become infused in how we think about the world. So I want to just say that this class has done a magnificent job today. I'm looking forward to seeing all the great things you're going to do when you're out there in the world. And I urge you to stay in touch with us and become workshop clients in the coming years. Thanks again.